On this episode of Mindful Mutiny, we're going to be looking at the legend of Theseus and the Minotaur and how this relates to you and your ADHD brain and your anxious brain and the way that you view yourself and Overwhelm. Long ago in the anxious world, the powerful island of Crete was ruled over by King Minos. Minos carried with him a terrible and cruel secret. Many years earlier, his wife had been plagued by a passion for a great white bull. And after having consummated that relationship, a terrible creature, the Minotaur, was born. This hideous, violent, horrible creature was so awful that King Minos contracted an architect, the greatest in the land, to build a labyrinth underneath the kingdom. A labyrinth so confusing, so difficult to navigate that when you went in, you become immediately confused and unable to find your way out. And deep in the bowels of this labyrinth was where this Minotaur lived. Now, as a tribute to an old offense, Athens was forced to send 14 of their greatest youth, the most incredible young men, 7 of them and 7 maidens, to go into these labyrinths and stay there until eventually they became lost, disillusioned, and devoured by this terrible beast. And years after years, every 14 years, this debt needed to be paid by Athens. It was a terrible debt, and it was one that the people of Athens grieved. One day, the brave young prince, the son of King Aegeus of Athens, came forward to his father and said, "I wish to go as one of the 14. I wish to go as tribute. I will destroy this terrible beast. I will break this curse." And as you can imagine, the king was very saddened by this, because nobody had ever even tried to challenge the Minotaur. Nobody had ever tried to stand up to this terrible beast, let alone the idea of going into this terrible labyrinth and being smart enough to find your way out of this confusing, overwhelming series of caves and corridors. And the king reluctantly gave in to his son, allowing him to go as tribute, as one of the 14. And as a father does, he knows that his son has more courage than sense, and he grieved deeply that he would likely lose his son to this terrible fate. And the father said, "I will worry for you every single day that you are gone, and I want to be the first to know that you have returned. And so as you go, I'm giving you 2 sets of sails for your boat, because I want to be the first to know. Upon your return, if you are still alive, please have the white sails up on your boat. But in the case that you have lost to this Minotaur and you are no more, please have the crew of your ship fly the black sails." And so the 14 youth, along with Theseus, sailed under the black sails all the way to the island of Crete, where they were paraded at court in front of the entire court. The arrogant leaders of the kingdom mocked them and threw things. But the daughter of King Minos saw Theseus and saw something different about him. He was incredibly brave. He was not afraid. He made eye contact with the king. There was a rage in him, while the others appeared to be fearful the same way that all of the other youth had always been fearful. This young man was not fearful, and there was something in his spirit that she immediately was drawn to. She immediately fell in love with him. So that evening, the princess went down to the dungeons, and she snuck up to the bars where he was locked up, and she began to speak with him and said, "I cannot bear to see you fed to that terrible beast. I can see the bravery in you. What is it that you need?" He bravely said, "I need all of the tools necessary to fight him and find my way back." And so she brought him 2 gifts. She brought him a very sharp and well-balanced sword that he immediately began flinging around inside the jail cell and said, "This one will do." And then she gave him a large ball of wool string, and she would hold one end of it, and as he entered the cave, he would release the string, and then after he slayed the giant beast, he would find his way back to her by following the wool string. He took both of these gifts. And so the 14 were ceremonially driven towards the mouth of the cave, where they were all driven in, and the giant doors were slammed behind them, and there they all stood in darkness with nothing but the smell and the dankness of the corridors. Theseus held on to the ball of wool, and outside the doors the princess held on to the end of the string, and she could feel the pulls of him walking down the corridor and getting further and further and further from her. And he couldn't see anything. And he could feel the walls, and once in a while there would be a window that would shine some amount of light, but all it was that him and the other 13 could smell and hear was the scraping of hooves deep down in the labyrinth, and the smell of old blood, and the stain on the walls of old death. And they continued walking, all of them except for one, falling into hopelessness. And it was soon the case that Theseus was face to face with the giant Minotaur beast, and he swung his sword, and the beast flung the sword to the side, and he grabbed the sword and then swung the sword at the beast. This terrible fight went on, and Theseus became tired, but he continued fighting until the moment when he climbed on top of the back of the Minotaur and plunged his sword deep into the back and through the heart of the Minotaur and killed the Minotaur. The other 13 were so delighted. They all celebrated, and Theseus went over and picked up the end of the wool and pulled on the wool, finding his way all the way back to where the mouth of the cave was, in the way that nobody was ever supposed to find. And as he and the 13 emerged from the labyrinth, the princess was there to greet him, and Theseus grabbed her and kissed her passionately. They knew that they would be pursued, and so they ran in haste back to the ship, and they jumped on the ship, and they pulled up their anchor, and they all began sailing away and celebrating. And there was so much celebration and excitement that they never changed the black sails. And they sailed back to Athens under the black sails. The king of Athens watched patiently from the top of a mountain, and on the horizon emerged a familiar ship. And he looked through his looking glass to see which ship this was, and he was so delighted that he recognized the ship, but he became so deeply disheartened when he recognized that the sails were black, color of the death of his son. And he became so sad that he hurled himself off of the cliff down into the water and died. And Theseus landed in the harbor and walked off, being greeted as a great hero, and asked where his dad was, and was told that his dad had seen the black sails and assumed his death, and had hurled himself from the top of the mountain down into the water, because the only thing of joy in his entire life was now gone. Or so he had thought. And so the return home that was to be a joyous occasion became bittersweet. And Theseus became a great king of Athens. Theseus became a trusted king, and he lived out the rest of his days as a hero to his people, and also a man who lived with great shame that he had forgotten to change his sails. If you have ADHD, you understand what it's like to enter into a space in your life where you just feel like you're confused, where you're confused by a maze of different decisions and different choices and different things to do. And the difficult thing is that this life doesn't necessarily come with a very easy book to follow when it comes to navigating your life with ADHD. We know that we have the strength to beat all of our enemies. We know that we have the ability to do and think in ways that help us do incredible things and accomplish amazing things. But oftentimes we get lost in the maze. Oftentimes we forget where we are. The wool, the piece of string, is the thing that actually creates the way for us to find our ways back. The thread is our organization. The thread is knowing who it is that we actually are. The thread is staying consistent with our goals. The thread is knowing what we need to do in order to do the beginning, middle, and end of the things that we need to do. It's not enough that we understand how to beat the Minotaur. It's about understanding how to organize our life so that we can start something and finish it. And without a thread, the thread is the right counseling, the right coaching, the right medicine, the right lifestyle, the right reduction of noise, we're never going to be successfully able to enter a labyrinth and exit the labyrinth successfully. We also understand what it's like to make major mistakes along the way, to become distracted and forget to change the sails, and almost completely destroy the entire mission. Why? Because we weren't paying attention to the details. How difficult would it have been for him to look up and remember, my goodness, I've got the black sails up. This is going to tell my father that I'm dead. If he would have slowed down, if he would have had the presence of mind to think about what it was that he was doing and not get lost in the celebration, he would have changed the color of the sails to white. And it was after that that he lived with shame. He couldn't get beyond his mistake, his seemingly innocuous mistake of not changing the color of the sails drove his father to a sense of dread and loss. And so Theseus was left to judging himself, to having slayed a great beast, having saved his kingdom from a terrible fate, being looked upon as a hero, but seeing himself as a failure. Slaying the Minotaur is you slaying the inner critic, the piece inside you that tells you that you're not good enough, that you're not smart enough, that you can't find your way out of the labyrinth, that you're not capable of doing incredible things. Of course you are. You have the ability to slay that terrible beast inside of you that tells you lies about your potential. There is no Minotaur that should be eating your self-worth, telling you that you aren't worth it, pushing you aside and making you feel small. That Minotaur lives in the mind of every single person with ADHD, and it tells you that you are small when you are big. This Minotaur inside of you, it's not destroyed by running away. It's not destroyed by denial. It's not destroyed by the next technique that somebody teaches you on how to overcome your ADHD. It is destroyed by you truly believing in the incredible nature of yourself, your consciousness, and how you connect to your cosmic value. Theseus did not slay the Minotaur by running mindlessly through this labyrinth until he found the Minotaur and fighting him. He went in with a plan. He went in with a string. He walked down the labyrinth. Slowly, he laid down the string so that he could find his way back. Slowly and deliberately, he got to his goal and fought the Minotaur. And slowly, carefully, making sure not to lose the string in the dark, slowly got his way back to the door where nobody else had been able to successfully walk out. This terrible tribute of 14 young people every several years being sacrificed was something that Athens had surrendered to, but it was something that Theseus saw as absolutely unacceptable. He would not surrender to this being the fate of him and his people. And although he was young, and we often have a lot more bravery when we're young, he stood up and he said, "No more. I'm not going to allow this to be the case. I'm going to stand up and I'm going to fight this." Those of us who are neurodivergent, we live our lives saying, "I'm just going to try harder. I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to slay the Minotaur by just working harder and having more discipline." But what Theseus walked into the cave with was a plan. Yes, he had a weapon, but he also had somebody on the outside helping work with him. He had the string. He had a way back. He had a plan. And a plan is what you need. In your life, you're just like Theseus. You have the energy, you have the strength, you have the intelligence, you have the ability. Do you have the plan? Do you have the belief in yourself? Or is that Minotaur, that terrible beast inside of you that tells you that you're not worth it? Are you busy fighting that? And do you need help along the way in finding your own string to get in, fight your beast, figure out how to not be overwhelmed anymore, reduce your anxiety, and walk out of your own labyrinth triumphant? You have every single ability to be Theseus in your life. You have every single ability to fight your own Minotaur and win. You don't just simply have to sit back and watch terrible things happen in your life. Why? Because you say terrible things to you. I'd love to help you along the way in your work of trying to find the Theseus inside of you, because you can. You don't have to live in overwhelm. You don't have to live in a sense of being ashamed because you forget things, because you're not perfect, because you sometimes overdo it or underdo it or bungle it or make mistakes. Other people might judge you, but you don't have to. If you're dealing with this kind of thing, I would love to have a conversation with you because you are valuable. You can slay that terrible beast. Go to jeremyvanwert.com, check out what I do. There's a link in the description of this episode, and I'd love to chat with you. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Mindful Mutiny. Now go be something great.